This series, Dead Gods, documents my creation of a graphic novel set in the antediluvian era. With the world on the brink of annihilation, the shipwright braves a realm infested with fallen angels, dragons, and tyrannical giants to gather vital knowledge that can help his family rebuild civilization. In this video, I finish 2 more panels from the short episode titled Hunting Ground, and I redesign one of the first characters I drew for this project. Starting with the first panel, I drew up a serpent design for the center of the makeshift throne room of this hunting camp, squatting in the midst of some ancient ruins. I'm trying to find ways to integrate 2D and 3D workflows to speed up the development process. With the serpent placed on the stone floor, I could turn my attention to the central figure, the warthog. For those just joining us, the warthog was attempting to hunt a dragon, but his kill was snatched by the shipwright. He has returned to camp empty-handed. I've said it many times, every artist should try to tell sequential stories at some point. It's easy to fall into the rut of drawing only what we're comfortable with. Attempting to tell a story forces us to draw things we never would have chosen on our own. This kneeling pose was stretching. I switched to red for the lower half of the body so that I could keep track of everything. Getting the skeleton in place helped a ton. As overwhelming as these different poses can feel, if you know where the muscles are anchored, it's just a matter of attaching everything, and accounting for all the muscles pushing against each other. With the anatomy figured out, I could dress him in his outfit. He had a mask, but it was smashed when he was knocked unconscious by the shipwright. This means that we can now get a slightly better view of his face. I briefly thought about tilting his head up so that we could get a look at him, but it didn't feel right for this shameful and terrifying moment. Besides, I can be patient. I intend to give him more time in this story. With his line work figured out, I moved on to some of the other figures in the scene. 2 servants stand nearby. One is holding his ruined mask and wig. The servants provide an opportunity that I don't want to pass up. For the warthog, even returning to camp is an act of tremendous courage. He's holding it together. Through the expressions on the servants' faces, I can convey some of the fear, pity, and dread they must be feeling for him. I also noticed some negative space at the top of the panel that was crying out for a huge statue. As mentioned previously, if there's room to add a huge figurative statue, I'm using it. On to color, which I rarely have much to say about. The servants share the warthog's colors, as well as some of the same jewelry as the woman we saw at the beginning of this short episode, though they aren't as richly adorned with tattoos or dragon tooth belts. With all the flat colors laid in, it was time to balance some rocks, pushing and pulling values, trying to simply indicate lighting, making sure that the silhouettes all read clearly, and get a sense of depth in the scene. There are always 100 things that could be polished or noodled with, so it helps to have an internal metric for success. For me, that line is, all the elements are telling the story. And with that, I crossed my line. This panel could be called done. Now, for the first introduction to the god of the hunt. This wide panel was always going to be a big task. Not only will it be the first time we see a Nephilim in this story, we also see his highest-ranking acolytes. They were some of the first characters I ever drew for this project, which was more than a year ago. In that time, I've learned a lot about what I want this project to be, so I feel confident about their new appearances. The centipede is probably off eating something horrific under a log somewhere, so we won't see him in this episode. The wolf doesn't get a redesign, because honestly, I loved how he turned out a year ago, and when I went to redesign him, there was nothing I wanted to change. But one last redesign is necessary. The god of the hunt, who I've been referring to as the dragon, was from the second video in this series. I like his original design, but I am at the mercy of the story. The first version of him was more of an in-the-field look, someone who was in the middle of his own hunting trip. For this introduction, I want to portray him as a more mysterious, godlike figure, more regal, more proud. When he was first drawn, he was a human, shaped into monstrous form through his many centuries of hunting deadly prey. However, a while back, I decided to make him the first giant, or Nephilim, to appear in the story. He's descended from a fallen angel father and a human mother. For his outfit, I still wanted to keep it simple. It's still dragonhide with a cape, only now they create more of a mantle and collar, with some exaggerated spikes. All the way back to my intro video, I said that when it comes to research, when faced with several equally feasible interpretations of the available material, I would be choosing to use the most visually spectacular option. Well, the most visually spectacular option when it comes to designing Nephilim is to make them look like clowns. There are compelling theories that posit that these tyrannical giants had pale skin, red hair, favored high-contrast patterns, emulated the reptilian features of the great serpent, and would often have mouths and noses stained with the blood of whoever they had last eaten. Bound to the earth like their fathers, the Watchers, their spirits lingered after death, and their influence has been felt for millennia. It's unhinged, but for my purposes, it works. We now officially have our six-fingered and six-toed Nephilim Clown god of the hunt. With the scene this complicated, I try to keep each element in its own labeled group with color-coded layers for anatomy and clothing. The more organized I am, the less daunting it all feels. Then, I try not to think of how much work is ahead of me, and I focus on the next thing, and then the next, and then the next. Before I know it, everything has been penciled in. Thankfully, it always happens sooner than I expected. At this point, it's on to the inking stage. While this plays out, let me paint you a picture of the future of this project and how you could play a role. One thing that has become abundantly clear to me as I develop this story is that it has the potential to be massive. If I continued at this same pace and created all the episodes I currently have planned, it would probably take me 20 years to complete. Honestly, it's too much story for one person. Thanks to my incredible patrons, I can already afford to pay an editor for these videos. That has freed up at least one extra drawing session per week. With more support, eventually, I'll be able to do this full time, which would mean that instead of 8 hours per week, I'd be able to comfortably put in 10 hours a day. I'd also like to eventually fill 2 roles. In the new attention economy, it would be helpful to have someone who can handle social media, branding, making clips, and even going so far as merch wrangling. The second is being able to hire a talented model builder who can create 3D environments, props, and even characters to aid in the creation of the story. Ultimately, if this project is able to garner enough attention and support, I'd really like to be able to hire another artist to be able to draw entire episodes. As much as I love making this story, it's the story that I want to get out there. This all becomes a reality with your help. Like, comment, subscribe to help intimidate the algorithm, share the Dead Gods trailer with friends, sign up on Patreon and join our growing community, or buy a copy of my previous story, Tellurian, physical evidence that I can finish what I start. Links are in the description, and thanks for hearing me out. With the inks in place and the colors laid down, I could indulge in one of my favorite steps. I've compared it to balancing stones, but when the image is this complicated, it feels a little more like untangling Christmas lights. I like untangling Christmas lights. As always, it's about keeping focused on storytelling. This means making sure that everything that's important reads clearly. There are less layers in this image than it probably appears, so it was still manageable. My highest priority was making sure that the warthog always read clearly and the gigantic god of the hunt was obscured in shadow. And with that, this daunting image is complete. It felt like a major undertaking, but by eating it a bite at a time, this elephant has been consumed. It may be one of my favorites so far. This also means that page 3 is complete. Only one more to go, and episode 2, Hunting Ground, will be finished. After this episode, there are 2 options for episode 3. My Dragon Tier patrons get to vote on aspects of this project. This is going to be their most significant vote yet, and I don't think it's going to be an easy choice for them. Oh, and if you've created Dead Gods related artwork, send it to me with the name you'd like in the credits, and I might put it at the end of a future video. Thanks for watching.